Snowball is working. Great. Let's get these chats. All right, everybody. All right. Good morning. Good morning. Hi, Bosch. Right. Tuesday. Let's make sure our little guy here is roll forward. Good morning. So this one's a little higher up, maybe. Move that down. Good morning. Let's see better. Just to see who's coming in. Let's see. Maybe. Good morning. That. Interesting. Yeah. Try later. Huh? I get these kind of laid out, and then we're going to split. Good morning. And again, the horns kind of finished where I want them. So I feel good mostly about the rest of it. And then we're going to split the horns off into their own shapes. So that's going to be kind of my plan here. And we need to point up a little bit more. So I can lower the ones in front. Got different species of this lizard in front of me, and so I think it'll end up being somewhat of an average of them, but there are things that we want to change. So that's kind of what I'm focusing on this morning. But these need to come down. Down here more. So Sunday when I came, I didn't come on, but I was working on this. I was kind of focused on kind of just getting things generally where they belong, and then yesterday I was really focusing on getting the form to look a lot better. So that's kind of the big plan this morning. It's popping in. Oops. Let's just be sure everybody's working properly. Oh. Picking up some new subs on the YouTube, which is good. That's not great, but it's fine. So that one seems to go up a little bit. We go there. That should be here. Good morning. see. That goes for there. Mm-hmm. Let's see. That should come out a little more. I'm using the point up a little bit more. We'll do. Go ahead and use lasso mask. All Control I, and then gizmo for that. I mean, there is a gizmo, but how do you move it around? Do a quick search, see if I can find the answer to that question. What's good? Many things. It's nice to start the morning this way, so just trying to figure out how to. It's not there. Oh, let's see. You're a creep, so we're getting ready. Let's see. Kick. Fan. All right. Shift. Nope. There we go. That was the answer to the question I was trying to figure out. Okay. Alt. R. There's a pose brush. Let's see, where's that? Nope. There it is. Yeah, let's try that. Alright, where were we? Interesting brush. Oh, that's what's happening here. Good morning. Where'd my reference go? That's my reference. Good morning. Oh, appreciate that. This is based off of a horned lizard. This is a lizard from not from the United States. It's from the Southwest U.S. And they have an interesting thing going, kind of having these crazy horns on them. They shoot blood out of their eyes as a defensive mechanism. So they squirt blood at you. I'm just kind of trying to clean up some of these forms. I want to split the horns off into their own forms. Horned lizard. Here's my reference right there. Yeah, well, that's the desert for you, right? You get some crazy looking critters. They're not very big, they're like not that big, something like that, with the tail. But now the one you really got to watch out for in the desert is the Gila monster, spelled with a G, Gila. They're actually poisonous. One of the few poisonous lizards in the world. Um, yeah, so they're not like giant lizards or anything, but these guys are pretty small. So, but yeah, goal here is I haven't sculpted very much in a while, and mostly in ZBrush or Nomad Sculpt. So I wanted to add kind of Blender to my skill set for a while. So I've been looking at how you do that here, among other things, in Blender for the last while. And just back up. Nice sort of spacing there. And so I thought I would start doing some of these animal busts. I'll start with this one and then see how far I can take it, and then try another one, another one, another one. Get a good shot of how deep this goes into the neck. If you look at the improvisation, I'll probably do here is if you look at the reference I have, these are actually there are different species of the same lizard. So if you look at like him here versus the one over here, like the horn layouts are different. Like he doesn't have the same horns here, so they're a little bit different. So I'm trying to merging them a little bit, um, but mostly it's just to do the clean study. It might be somewhat stylized or simplified, but the idea is to kind of do an intensive study of this and then maybe use this on my own designs. So that's kind of the plan. Shield a little bit more depth. So that's kind of what I'm planning here. Is that. Get some of these folds on here. Sculpt a lot of these scales onto him. Yeah, so that's I like to have like a little bit of a plan when I'm sitting down to do these things. So no, and I'm not like a pro 3D guy or anything. I call myself a fan of 3D. So I like doing it, but it's not like my main jam. So I added this support in there for the other guy. Let's see. Yeah. So, you know, are you a Blender user? They're about to come out with version 5.2, which I think is supposed to come out today, I believe. I think it's supposed to, I forget what the exact sculpting tweaks that they've made to it, but it's supposed to be like easier to swap between tools among a few other things. Let's see. Fluid sim. I think that's a big update coming in. The next one is some fluid stuff, right? I've been an off and on Blender user. And kind of ever since they went subscription, I've been kind of not as interested in using them. Which is funny because I actually get Blender. I get a lot of these programs for free through my university where I teach. But like I've stopped using Adobe for the most part. I think there's a couple of things I'm probably still going to use a little bit of, but for the most part I've stopped using Adobe, and I get all their stuff for free, Substance included. But so you know, using Affinity mostly for image editing and graphics and layout. They put it all in one program, which is nice. It's also free. They want you to buy a Canva AI subscription, but I'm not doing that. So it's funny. I did buy version 2 of Affinity, like outright before they got. Might have been after they got acquired by Affinity, but they weren't free yet. But so that is in. Okay, it'd be funny, but yeah, it's kind of funny how easy it is to use Affinity, and like there's not really anything in particular, at least that I miss from Photoshop. Really, I think I did find like I think in a if you're using what's it called the vector side, it doesn't have like the blend shapes thing that Adobe has. Yeah, so brushes here, I don't know, I probably should move them around somewhere else. There's probably a better way of doing the layout in here. So this is a large Cintiq screen. So it's like I have to come down here to do that, or go way over there to do that, or go way over there to do that. And it's probably a better layout I should be using. What does this one do? So this won't do anything. Like I just found out, I was just watching this guy's video. You can use the trim brush in reverse to draw shapes. That seems really nice. I think it's just there by default. I guess I can move it up. I think you can move it to the side over there too or something. I haven't bothered with setting up my interface that much, which I probably should do. Oh, hello over there on YouTube. You struggle to make a rectangle? Well, you type Shift A, and then you add plane. So there's your super big pro tip. Someone was saying that they can't make a rectangle in Blender. Yeah, there's your big pro tip right there. Same thing with this over. So we're going to knock this back. Right there. Yeah, so that's just where they've been. I know they used to be on the left for the. It could be I just had my asset browser down there, and that's why it's down there in sculpt mode. Maybe I moved that down there or something. But if there's a better place to put it, let me know. I just haven't thought about it. Let's see. So, yeah, so I'm always open to suggestions. So I'm not a pro with this program at all. So, and I'm really more of a 2D guy, but I like to add things to my skill sets over time. So using version 4, huh? Is there a particular reason for that, or? Well, this is sculpt mode, so I'm not using subdivisions at all here. I can. They have actually a special subdivision thing for sculpting, but you really want to save that for when you're putting on smaller details after you've got the topology figured out. But I think with the weird issues with subdivision modifiers, I think it has to do with the spacing of your polygons and your vertices. So if they're not properly spaced, then they can cause weird hangups to happen. There's little horns on here that I'm going to put on later, so I'm just trying to figure out how to set up this bolt so it indicates them. Oh, yeah. I've been I was using the Quick Tools add-on stuff for a while, but I've kind of been looking at like I always felt like I was like tying my fingers in knots trying to use it, and and then the guy who makes it, this Alexander guy, he went like full AI bro, and I'm just like, So, and it was actually interfering. One of the like the where you can do the remesh thing here, its shortcut was it's the add-on was interfering with it. So that was actually the first reason I took it off. Um, it was because that was actually being interfered with. Like, why isn't this thing working? Oh, it's this add-on that's interfering with it. So, and then it was the way that it works is like it kind of keeps you from using a lot of the actual tools in Blender, and which it's supposed to make it more convenient. But I kind of have this thing in my brain where it's like if I don't understand how something works, that really bothers me. I don't know what you call that, if that's a mental illness or not. But I've always had that. Like, that gave me big troubles in math classes when we were using formulas. And like, well, just accept the formula. And I'm like, well, but why is it working this way? I didn't always voice that question, but it's always in my head. Like, well, why is it this way? And so I often end up doing things the hard way. But it also makes me want to understand how things work, which I think helps with my teaching because then I have to explain things to a student properly, right? Um, like, I've got a really deep understanding of perspective now, largely because the student asked me why we were doing something. I didn't exactly know why. I just like, well, so I've always done it, and it led me down a deep dive into how it actually works. And so, yes, I've been looking for things that work and learning how to do textures properly, the materials rather properly. But that's just me. Any good add-ons you like? I know people like some of these like I've actually got a bunch of them. What's it like Mesh 3D or what's it called? Uh, so I bought a lot of modifiers, a lot of those things over the years. But but as I kind of get into them, I'm like, well, why does it actually? Or I'm trying to do something specific. It's like, well, you know, the modifier doesn't make it really clear how to do that. That becomes like a problem for me. So let's see. Yeah, I did see that, but I had like this one I liked a lot on here. I hadn't checked to see if it's been updated or not, but basically um, it's like a add-on that lets you do hard ops. That's what I was thinking. Yeah, people like that a lot. I always again that's another one where I feel like I'm always being like my fingers are being turned into knots while trying to use it, but maybe I just haven't spent enough time in it. And part of it too is I'm not really that interested in creating like production ready models. I'm more about concepting. But I know that those two are really popular. Um, I have them, so you know. But it's been a while since I've looked at them. Was it Fluent modeling or Fluent something or other? I have that one too, which seems a little bit easier to use. But again, I just haven't spent enough time. There's a weird thing too I've noticed, like with online Blender people, especially there's like these Blender Bros guys that push that one a lot. I don't know if they have ownership over it or whatever. Um, but like their work looks terrible. They have like no aesthetic sensibility at all. It's bizarre. Um, which is interesting. Um, like their stuff just looks very kind of boring. Uh, yeah, so I have those ones though. Um, but I know they do a lot of tutorials on using both of those. And one of them too, he's like really hard to understand. Like whatever his accent is sounds like he's got rocks in his mouth or something. He's trying to talk. I'm not sure what his nationality is, but maybe that's just a me issue, right? Yeah, maybe it's just. Yeah, they're very technical. I found like a lot of artists who use Blender, they seem to be very technically focused. Um, it's interesting because you think like, oh, this anyone can use this, therefore this would like unlock all kinds of creative individuals, and they would be doing all these wonderful tutorials and all of that. And I've just found like a lot of the work that I see on YouTube tends just to be really technically based. I have bought tutorials too, so I've like Jose Vega. I think he does like kind of stuff that's more in line with what I would want to do. And I picked up one of his tutorials. Got one of is it Piotr Krinsky, I think. The only thing I don't like about him is like he's like one of the concrete and rust guys. So it's like everything is concrete and rust. Everything's like rust and concrete. I'm like, I did see who was it, Aurora something that put out a tutorial recently. I'm like, oh, here's somebody who uses color. One of the things I've been seeing people like riffing on Hollywood for lately is just like the absolute lack of color in their projects. Like some I've been seeing some people recolor that recent Superman movie, which is more colorful than a lot of movies recently, but it was still like not that colorful. I've been seeing this guy has been like some people that have been going through on YouTube, not YouTube, but it's on Twitter is where I saw it. I think where they're just like amping up the reds and the blues. Yeah, I think it's an Eastern European thing, because the collapse of the Soviet Union a while back, left a lot of stuff kind of unfinished and broken. Um, I mean, that doesn't mean everything has to be like super primary colors everywhere in their stuff, but um, they, but yeah, there is like this weird thing where it's like no color, everything is beige and brown and gray. Let's see what's on. Let's see. There it is. Let's see. Socials. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not against post-apocalyptic, but I'd like, to see somebody else's, somebody's take on it rather than just whatever the standard view, they've only seen in movies or TV shows or whatever. I always find it funny, like shows like The Walking Dead, how everyone starts getting kind of stylish after a while, after the show gets going. Like everything starts to turn. Uh, Everyone like their clothes look a lot nicer all of a sudden for some reason, which I always thought was a little strange. You think that things would be like degrading more, or in turn, if they don't get as many chances to clean up or whatever. But it's like I'm working on a comic book, and part of it is there is going to be uh, there's this aspect to it where they're isolated. It's not really post-apocalyptic. It's more of like they're a colony that's been sent out to this other world, and they're kind of starting to run into problems because they didn't plan appropriately for what they would see when they arrived. It's kind of a leap of faith situation, and they can't go back, so they're kind of stuck with what they have. But it's less post-apocalyptic and more just like they're running low, um, running out of gas, effectively. And and they ran into some problems on their arrival too. So that'll be kind of its little twist. But it was funny because like I remember when I watched like this. I see this in a lot of like newer shows, especially. But it's like everyone's suffering in this world, but everyone looks really healthy and mostly kind of clean, aesthetically dirty. Yeah, something. I don't know. Maybe they just tell their actors they can't take a bath for 3 months or something. Get into that method acting or something. But that's like I remember watching Alien Romulus, and supposedly these kids are all supposed to be like sickly and abused, and they're living in a really challenging situation, and they all look mostly kind of perfectly healthy and fine. Like I don't know what their problem is. What do they? It seems like Wayland Yutani or whatever is taking good care of them out there. For some reason, there's fires in barrels. Barrels from like now, but yeah, it feels off. I always appreciated that about what's her face who played Sarah Connor, who like got herself ripped in prison, effectively in the show, in the movie. Um, Linda Hamilton, or she actually, took the time and the effort. Or you'll see that for especially the male actors in superhero films where they get like super jacked. Probably using a lot of steroids and stuff. It's not really good for you. But then the girls all look really soft. It's like, well, we don't want to actually get ripped up for this part. We want to keep our aesthetics looking nice. For some reason, we shouldn't be expected to try as hard as the boys. There are exceptions, but it's just like, I'll see that all the time. It's like, been building this house down the street. I mean, it burned down a year ago, so I've been actively doing stuff. But yeah, it's just something I see all the time. Like, doesn't really make sense to me. It's like, you watch the original Alien film and you believe these people are just like, workers. They're just truck drivers in space was the concept. And I felt like it, he really had that really communicated really well. He even sort of did that in The Abyss later on, where it felt like they were effectively truck drivers underwater. Yeah, but a lot of times I'll watch these movies and I'm like, I don't believe you. It's taken me a couple days too to get used to using control for the negative in here because I was used to sculpting before in ZBrush, and so having to go from Alt to Control, that throws me off a little bit. Yeah, so it's like I go to these movies and I want to like them. Like I'm going in there, I'm like, I want to like this movie. I'm gonna have a good time watching this movie, and I'm watching. What is going on here? I just think, if they're going to spend, $250 million on a project like that, they should probably spend a little more time, on the back end working on the script and story and all that stuff. Like one of the weird things I always thought was weird about a lot of the Disney Marvel stuff is that all of the costumes, they all feel like they're kind of from the same planet for the most part. Like it didn't feel like, the Earth Avengers costumes were that different from, say, Thor's or Guardians of the Galaxy. I noticed that they use a lot of hexagons in the shapes for some reason. I also don't understand. I really didn't like it when everything switched to being nanotech, especially with Iron Man. It's just like everything was all the mechanical stuff, not the generated procedural modeling or procedural stuff they're doing for his costume after that, which I guess is easier. But I assume it's easier anyway. It's like they all kind of like the so I mean, it was kind of neat the first time, but beyond that, or why they take their helmets off all the time. Like they're in the middle of like a battle where there's lasers and monsters running around everywhere, And every time they want to say something, they take their helmet off. I mean, you'd think you'd get a good noise canceling microphone inside of those helmets at some point. Yeah, but I definitely preferred the mechanical suit over the other one. Click on drawing and precision. Well, I mean, it depends on what it is you're trying to learn. Draw more is often a terrible idea. In fact, when I was teaching at Ringling College of Art and Design, I was brought in to teach motion designers drawing, and so I went around for the most part. I mean, there's other departments involved too, entertainment design and virtual reality. Just funny because there's only like 5 students in each year of that major. They got some kind of grant to push it, so there you go. But that was what people I went around asking people in the department, different members of the area, what they would like to have. It's foundations class first year. What skills would they like to see them have as they go into their sophomore and junior years from the drawing classes. And their answer was always more drawing. And I'm like, oh. I think part of the problem too is a lot of these guys, lads and lasses, they don't actually draw very much. So they're just like, oh, we just like, drawing. I'm like, oh, that's not very helpful. The department chair had a better vision for that. He's recently just retired. So I would say it depends on what you're trying to do. So in their case, I would go to the department meetings. One of the things they did differently there is the first year program was kind of embedded within the majors that they were serving. So I would attend the motion design meetings, and I was in their offices. Which is interesting because I didn't know anything about motion design before going there. So I had a lot to learn about what that meant. It was really interesting. So then they went full like AI. It was really sad to watch. Like, oh, we love the AI. Everything's saying AI is the future. Yeah. No, thank you. But so I would pay attention to the meetings. And I was like, oh, well, they needed, their students use a lot of lenses in their planning. So I adjusted they wanted perspective and figure drawing as courses specifically that they were studying. And then, so I was like, well, what if we taught perspective, but we used it and taught it in the context of drawing with lenses. So learning to see the lens in their drawing. And then you can, more construction drawing, so they could, understand structure of things. So perspective is a good fit for that. But what I did is I kind of shifted my course materials to make it more applicable to the major. So in the first semester, we did a lot of perspective stuff, but I tried to create kind of design solutions for what they were drawing in their perspective class. So like in the first major project, we did like an introductory perspective course thing, and basically we after that we did like a 1-point perspective course, but it's like super precise 1-point perspective. So it's like, how do you actually measure a cube in perspective? But what I did is I set up so they made like I called a Mobius Minecraft garden. So they built a walled garden using simple 3D primitives in perspective, and then they studied textures and then mapped those textures onto cubes, and then used that as their reference for the textures that they would put onto the actual garden itself. And so and then they had to draw it in the style, relatively in the style of Mobius, so using contours to render. So it became more about that than just the perspective. We'd spend like a certain amount of time on the perspective drawing, but it was really to get to this other thing. And so this is really cool stuff with that. And then their second project was a precise 2-point perspective project where they had to measure a room in their apartment. So usually it was their dorm room. So they had to actually use tape measure to measure the room. I did it with like a semi, I like to call it a, what's the word, metric system, but using inches, so it's like 10-inch segments, just to make it a little easier to work with. Probably overdoing that full back there. Trying to push this thing back. But by the time they got the room measured and laid out, they had to combine it with the concept, and then they could only render it in black and white shapes, so no lines, no contours, just intersecting black and white shapes in what we call NOTAM. So again, the thing I'm pointing making is that it should have a purpose. Their final project was then we jumped into lenses. So I was like, well, there's 1 and 2-point perspective drawings. These are basically 50-millimeter lenses, standard lenses that you were drawing with, and it gives you a sense of real space and distance of things. And then we added in fisheye and telephoto lenses into the projects. And the telephoto thing it's basically, I call it isometric 2-point. So you're looking at the scene, not isometric. Actually, it's the isometric project. There's an isometric project who created an isometric diorama where they combine architecture with specific letter forms to render out a little scene with a courtyard in the middle. And then they use that as reference for that final project we jumped into lenses. So they're kind of learning how to use concepts, like intellectual concepts, mixing things together, editorial illustration tricks, which are common in motion design. And then they're also learning perspective and using it as a tool for expression. Yeah, and then so the last one, they use that isometric diorama as a set. And I show how to use kind of an isometric camera to draw the scene in different points of view. And so they have to do 1-point, 2-point, 50-millimeter lenses, and then the telephoto thing I was talking about, so that uses an orthographic angle view. So basically, the idea is you're zoomed in so much that you don't see the tops and bottoms of things. You just see the sides. And so they have to do kind of at an angle, render it that way. And then fisheye. 1-point fisheye view, so they're not having to do anything too extreme with that. So, I would say with purpose, always with like an eye towards something. Like, is there a project that you want to use your drawing for? And that will tell you a lot about what it is you need to study. And I've tried to like make that more of a thing for myself too. So like these studies I'm doing here, in the comic project I'm working on, there's a lot of creatures I'm inventing, and I always think like it's a good idea to study real things to kind of be more in tune with that. But it's not just me. Like, I want to sculpt in Blender. So if you want to focus on environments, so that would be, a lot of people tend to focus on nature environments, which are actually a lot easier to do. So I would say, study things like, architecture, of course. Get into plein air painting. I'm a big advocate for that. I love going plein air painting. I need to get back into it. I've been trying to get other things done here in the studio this summer. I actually built a camper out of my Nissan Xterra, mostly for going plein air painting on location for extended periods. I had a friend who was going to do that with a van. He ended up quitting that project. It's a pretty hefty thing to like convert a vehicle. Like it's not an easy task. Um, so if you're focused on environments, I would say going out and sketching the real world with a eye focused on drawing architecture and nature. I would do a variety of studies at different levels of view. So the big scenes, smaller scenes, vignettes of scenes, details like studying textures and the surfaces of things. What is brick like? What is concrete like? What is different kinds of dirt like? Still much better. I think it's a little better in here. Both still a little overdone, but getting there. Well, this perspective, of course. Like those courses I was describing, I've added them to my teaching site along with a more intensive perspective course. So if I could bring that up, here's my teaching site. Been reworking the front end of this site, but I've got description of the course. Like there's the basic perspective course there. Here's the Mobius Minecraft Garden course. This is that 2.1 I was talking about. Here's the isometric diorama. And I've just finished recording a bunch of stuff for this. I only finished up to doing the 2.1 because it was originally built for being in class during COVID, and so I only finished it up to a certain point. Oh yeah, and the intensive ones over here. These go deeper into the perspective stuff over here. But that's stuff that I've put over there. And that's kind of what I focused on when I was working more consistently, professionally. Concept art was environment design. Something I realized as a student, especially back then when I was graduating in 2004, I was like, most of what you see in a game is environments. There aren't very many characters. There aren't that many creatures. So I was like, if I want to get a job in this area, I should focus a lot on environments. I think that's changed to a certain degree in that there's a lot more characters and creatures and stuff now. But back then, all that stuff was really expensive in terms of what it cost in terms of technological requirements. So this lizard looks sufficiently judgmental. Yeah, so I just finished. I need to get that lens course thing. I need to finish getting that kind of organized. I finished recording a bunch of videos a week or so ago. I need to get them processed and put up there. So, but that's the big thing, in terms of things by yourself, would just be going outside, drawing real things. I would also actually study architecture, like start looking at architects and industrial designers and things like that. Hello, over there on the Twitch side. Maybe stay a bit longer. Remember to save. It's always funny, you get used to working on the iPad a lot, and you never have to save over there. And that's not true on the computer. I mean, I think you can set up an autosave thing on Blender, if I recall, but I don't have that set up, I think. But it's like, if you're studying vehicle design, I would definitely study how engines work, or how motors work, or whatever, and how the suspension systems work. It's hard to do that kind of abstractly, and it helps to actually go out there and work on your own car, which is one of the benefits of the Xterra project I've had going for a while. Is I probably made some mistakes, definitely made mistakes along the way. I broke a lot of bolts and things like that, but I learned a lot. Like, oh, this is how the actual engine works. This is how the gas goes in and gets sprayed in. Very precise amounts that allows you to move the car forward. And this is the exhaust manifold and where it goes, and how the pistons work with the spark plugs and the I forget what they're called right off the top of my head. The things that shoot the electricity into the spark plugs, the ignition coils. I had one of those go bad on me once. So I was heading to the airport once. And I managed to fix it in the airport parking lot after I got back from my trip. Picked up the tools and things I needed for it, stuck it in my suitcase, and fixed it quickly in the parking lot. So I'm not sure if that's funny or sad or impressive. So that would be what I would recommend. It'd be studying, like looking at architectural styles, like actually sitting down and drawing them, like looking at different time periods you want to work with, look at how things were built, why. It's funny. I know this classical realist, Jacob Collins. I haven't talked to him in a very very long time, but I knew him from these. Fellowship I attended, Hudson River Fellowship. Or I met James Gregg actually a couple times. But he was asking me once if there's room in concept art and game design for like these classical realist approaches to architecture. And I kind of had to tell him not really, because the structure really doesn't matter, because it's all virtual. There's no actual consideration for how things really fit necessarily, and then the layout of things isn't really based on reality or how you would actually interact with the space. It's more based on the needs of the game, the narrative aspects of it. It's not that you can't do all that or understand that, but I think one of the things we see a lot of in a lot of media is just that people don't understand what's going on. Yeah. I always recommend my courses, of course. If you want to subscribe over there, that would be awesome. But those would be the things that you can definitely do on your own. Would be going out there, looking at architecture, looking at nature, getting a little gouache set, going outside and painting, or oils for that. I would really recommend acrylics for plein air painting, just because it's dries too fast outside. But definitely, going out there doing some plein air painting, doing sketches, drawing real things in the real world. Different map one. How about that one? There we go. Break it up a bit. But that's always the big thing, is going out and looking at the real stuff, and because a lot of people, they'll rely a lot on photo reference, or what they assume to be true, or other media, and that always reminds me of the scene in The Simpsons where they have the Simpsons are like on some kind of reality TV show or something, and the executives need new ideas, so they immediately pull out their portable TVs and start flipping through channels. So they're only looking at what other people have done for their inspiration, and that's a good source of inspiration a lot of times. Looking at what people do, but But I think that's often a mistake a lot of artists make. Is like, well, if it's other people, that looks cool, I'm just going to do that. And if everyone started emulating the marathon style right all of a sudden, which I think there's some good aspects to it, it's a little over rendered. Ah, so the value change. It could be low quality paint. Usually, what causes the value change is the water. So if you think about it, the water in the paint, it lets light in to the paint. You're fine. So your name is probably Yazhivsky or something, right? Yazhivsky. But it's the water in the paint. That's the problem. If you use too much water, there will be a big color shift. And that's because the water evaporates out and it's no longer letting light into the paint. So that's what's going on there. You don't maybe notice as much with the oils because the oils take longer to dry. So the oil does lighten the paint too. But it's just too much water. Okay, so you probably know that Kriski guy, right? He's from Poland, I think. I think that's what he said. I've been to Warszawa, where I had ostry kebab. But that was a long time ago. But yeah, so you know about all the post-apocalyptic leftover Soviet stuff. I'm 1/4 Lithuanian. I actually speak Lithuanian. Kalbu lietuviškai. Rete turiu galimybių šnekėti su kitais žmonėmis. But tak się говорю по-русски. Но не совершенно, конечно. But they yeah, but you got a lot of nice architecture there. What's his name? What's the name of that painter? I have a book of his stuff that I picked up in Warsaw. It's, I can't remember. He's kind of like the Polish John Singer Sargent. I forget his name off the top of my head. They had a painting of a woman who was smiling. And it really looked like, it was unusual because you don't see paintings where people look like happy smiling, like really, really expressively smiling. It's weird. And his one, like, she looked like she was genuinely happy in the painting. I forget the name. I've got a book of his stuff downstairs that I picked up when I was there. But hey, you got a lot of nice architecture out there in Europe. Not sure which part of Poland you're in. It's like I live in Richmond, Virginia. One of the nice things about Richmond is that it's actually one of the older cities in the United States. Wichokowski. That might be the one. I don't remember the name. They were like a 19th century. Like seemed like every country had a version of John Singer Sargent. Not that he was the original, but there was a lot of people that kind of painted that kind of big brushy style like he did, like Andrew Zorn, or there's a bunch of different ones. But there were a number of people that were kind of painting a similar style in the 19th century. But yeah, and of course Lithuania and Poland have a long history together. The Duchy of Poland, right? But Last time I was in Eastern Europe was in 2016. Went to Lithuania for a few weeks, did some painting there. It was October, so it was starting to get really cold, but it, there was really nice fall colors and everything. Did a bunch of watches there. And then went down to the Czech Republic to check out all the Mucha stuff. And then Budapest, which I've never been there before. I know Lithuania there, I think it was Vytautas who took over like a huge amount of Europe, like all the way down to the Black Sea at one point. They had that as a territory for. They slowly lost it, but they had that as a territory for a pretty significant amount of time. Lithuanians were famous for fighting off the Teutonic Knights. So they were, I think, the only, if I remember, the only country in Europe that really kind of turned to Christianity voluntarily, or Catholicism voluntarily. And I think they fought off the Mongols too. They're a little softer now. I'm a little sad about that. Yeah, but I've been there a few times in Lithuania. So. Bien tequila vrete kalbuletush. I felt like I could understand about 80% of what people said in Polish. When I was there, you could sort of read the text on things. Let's see. I have like rows of words. All of that. Also creases and skin. Yeah, but that big thing with Lithuania, like it's not very well known. Because nobody really. Robilesh v Varshavia. It's like what? I don't know Robilesh. That doesn't sound familiar. I once went to like the art museums and wandered around. But what I tend to do in most places, like wander around and look at art museums. So I went to the National Museum or something there. That was a long time ago when I was in Poland. That was like in. I tend to overdo the folds way too much. But whatever city I'm in. Oh, so it's kind of like, well, I don't know if you speak Russian or not, but yellow. It's yellow. Kind of sounds like the word robotic. Work. Yeah, so that's mostly what it is. I was only there for I think a few days, so I wasn't there very long. Actually, part of my family history is now inside of Poland. A little town called Punsk. It's up near the border of Lithuania and Poland, and it's part of Poland now. I think they, from what I've read somewhere, like it's a really small town. Like there's like, it's a really small place. There's like a little lake and a couple streets. But they actually Simon Schama, who he's not alive anymore. He was like an art historian, critic. Um, Apparently his family, they were Jewish. They came from there. Yeah, well, it's like Spanish and Portuguese, right, or Italian and Spanish or something like that. They're very. I think I understand. Like I've heard like Bulgarians speak, and I understand almost everything they say. I'm not sure how close Ukrainian is, in terms of similarity. Yeah, the Slavic family. Lithuanian, though, however, is different, right? The only other language that's really similar to it is Latvian. Um, and there was the old Prussian language, which is also very similar to Lithuanian, but it's kind of a linguistic oddity, where it's not Slavic, it's not like other languages nearby. Yeah, but that'd be my big advice. Any of it, if you're out there, just beautiful architecture and lots of nice nature and all of that stuff. So, I would definitely take some time every week. Find schedule time to get out there and study environments. Probably be another 10-ish minutes, and then move on to other things I got to get done today. But because I think a lot of people rely not too much on things like Pinterest. Like the image I'm using for this I got off Pinterest, but I'm always looking at my dog for anatomy stuff on animals. It's like, what are you doing? That's weird. Why are you looking at me? See how your leg muscles fit together. That's weird. But going figure drawing, of course, just in general is a good idea. I wouldn't be surprised if there's like plein air painting groups in Poland. Feeling better. So maybe tomorrow I'll cut those horns off and start separating things out. Um, Maybe hang out with those CD Projekt Red guys. I don't know how they are out there, but seems like they know stuff. I should finish playing that Cyberpunk game sometime. So plein air painting, sketching, learning perspective, always a good idea. What else? Architectural styles. You know, what makes them unique and interesting. Yeah. Well, you have to remember, you know, I should go find my little. No, run downstairs and grab one of my wash books. I'll be right back. All right. Got my watches. Sorry if you're on the YouTube side or whatever, but so there's some. There's the old book. So there's a group watch. There's another one. So the big thing, you know, with painting and color in general is that one's not so great, but whatever. This one's a little bit of a mess too. It's painting in the shade. I like this one. These are all gouache. This one's a little flat. Okay, a little mushy, but people like the color. Okay, I think. A little more challenging, so it's a little bit of a mess, but it's okay. These are mostly from last 2024. Looks like here's the one where it wouldn't dry. That was okay. A little hot in the colors. Some Western United States, more Western United States. This one has a nice softish glow, I guess. It's like a 5-minute thing. It's starting to get hot. Christmas Eve. So there's the next one set up. But there's that one, and then this is another book over here. But the main thing, you know, is just like is isolating your value patterns. Let's see. There's that one there, a little river. One of 2 paintings I did in Florida when I lived there. I didn't like living in Florida. I like my students and mostly my department up until they went full AI on everybody. But this is kind of how I start. This isn't quite done. But the big thing is just separating the value, so the shadow area versus the light area, and then temperature. So if you look here, like the light side of things and the shadows are all cold and gray and blue, where the light here is very warm. And that's a big thing in painting, is just isolating temperature. See a little vignette, like bigger, you know, so a smaller scene. Also, little snippet. And these are all like, you know, 2-3-ish hour paintings. There's not like strong highlights. This is very muted. It's all kind of compressed down. But the big thing is temperature changes. If you look here, it's cold there on top, right? And it's warmer down below. And same over here, like you can see it's kind of cold coming in this way, but then it's warmer on the other side. So temperature is a big deal. This one's kind of a mess. It was really windy and there's just like sand everywhere, so I didn't get that far into that one. But temperature is the big thing. So whether something is a warmer or a cooler color. In terms of the brushes too, I like to use these Sumi brushes from Deleter, Deleter Menso brush. But again, seeing its temperature. And the more white you put into something, the more it'll tend to shift to the cold, especially titanium white, is the default color for gouache. But you know, you don't have to have like strong, bright lights. This is an interior forest scene, and it's all relatively dark, but it's just again the temperature thing, right? So cool stuff, warm stuff. Let's look at that book. There's some smaller ones in here. Let's see. Let's see anything out. So I feel about it. There's a little mossy rock. We'll start on one. Somebody fell on the floor. Sometimes when I'm in the forest, I like to have two going at the same time while I'm waiting for one to dry. If it's really humid, it can take a while for the paint to dry. But I originally got into gouache painting because of Eric Tiemens, a concept artist for the Lucasfilm. I don't know if he's still there or not. He's retired or whatever. I know he worked on some recent stuff, relatively speaking, Disney, Star Wars stuff. But yeah, the big thing is temperature differences, and it's not so much whether it's light or dark, but often it's the temperature differences that make the most difference in terms of that feeling of light and color. And then it's also a value pattern, so whether something is in the light or in the dark. And if you can kind of get that sorted, then you'll have a much easier time. And that's a painting thing. So if you're struggling with that, it can often be a good idea to set up a still life in your house. Like set up a simple still life and really focus on that. And it's something you can spend an extended amount of time with some oils or whatever. And, really, because I'm a big believer in doing the at least two different types. Well, many types, but especially kind of subdividing things into quick and fast studies. A lot of people tend to focus exclusively on fast. And I think that's often a big mistake. It's believed that, working more quickly, you get kind of like a stronger feeling out of things. And I think where that comes from is a lot of times artists, they'll focus a lot, like in figure drawing, you do a lot more gesture drawings than you do finished drawings. And that's why the finished drawings look stiff, is because you just haven't done that many of them. You tend to do a lot more gesture drawings. The gesture drawings are great. But what often happens is with them, you end up using a lot of shortcuts, and it kind of, I think, can make work feel really stiff. Not stiff, but like you're kind of like repeating the same image over and over and over again because you haven't taken the time to look carefully at things. And I think that's big problem, personally, but so I think you kind of need both. Like, to do quick studies, like, if you're going out, like I did, like 5-minute color study, and that worked out pretty well. You get a lot out of that, but by doing a longer one, I get better and better at doing those, and they look nicer over time. I think there's a lot more in them. Or if I only did like quick slapdash things, I get a lot of good maybe some good color experience out of it, but then I also lose out on kind of a deeper view of what's going on. I end up kind of repeating myself over and over again by not taking that closer view. And I think that's really important to do that. To have both, to really get in there and really chew on something for a long time, to really think about it, pay attention to it. Yeah, so the first thing is always, the value patterns, the light, what's light, what is dark, the intersecting of those things, different parts of the light, and then paying attention to temperature, what is warm, what is cool, and that's that takes a lot of practice, learning to see that and how to manipulate that. It does take time to learn that. But I think I'm going to go ahead and call it there. It's 9:30, so I think I've been at this for like a little over an hour and a half. And get on to the next thing. I'm actually working on that teaching site today. Some writing I got to do. Not always a big fan of writing, but it's got to be done by me. No one else is going to do it. So. Anyway, appreciate the conversation and the questions. Always helps to make a more interesting stream that way. And be back with this tomorrow morning. Hopefully a little bit earlier. I actually slept in this morning a little bit, which is unusual. But probably good for me. We'll go ahead and leave this guy here. And I think tomorrow, hopefully, we'll be able to do the separating of the horns. Yeah, his actual size, if I were like holding him on my screen, would be something like this. His actual real. I think a little smaller than that, probably like that. Yeah. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you all later. Shut off the other streams too.